Hello, everybody. Today we're going to be getting started with Chapter 6, which deals with reforms in Kansas. And a lot of the reforms that we're going to be talking about through this chapter actually happened in Kansas first. First place it happened in the entire United States. So, kind of a neat deal there. Lesson 1 that we're going to be dealing with today talks about the industry and the Gilded Age. Industry and big business are really going to take off in the late 1800s, early 1900s in Kansas. Late 1800s, the U.S. saw a huge rise of industrialization. Industrialization is just the spread of factories and machines in a city or country. And this sparked a huge wave of inventions of transportation, communication, and manufacturing. And all of this caused big business to take off. Now, what do we mean by big business? Railroads were considered to be the first big business. Their success led to other industries and led to success in other industries and allowed them to expand, such as iron and coal mining, as well as the lumber industry. Entrepreneurs, which are just businessmen who are willing to take risks by investing in and managing new businesses, people who are going to sponsor people to help them get their businesses off and running. They're the ones who help the rise of big business because wealthy businessmen controlled the entire industries. This created monopolies and trusts. Trusts are just a group of companies that work together to beat out the competition in an industry. Kansas big business, we had and have several. The railroad industry still was huge during this time. Milling was huge. Flour mills transformed our Kansas wheat into flour. Mining is just the extraction or removal of natural resources from below the ground. Some of these minerals were coal, oil, natural gas, lead, zinc, and salt. And oil was big business. Norman Number 1, which is an oil well that was in Neodesha, was the first big oil drill that was west of the Mississippi River. And this caused the opening of Standard Oil in southeast Kansas, which became a huge monopoly. Standard Oil was a huge big business in Independence even. The picture here is of Big Brutus. Once all the coronavirus scare gets over, I encourage you guys to go check out Big Brutus. It's one of the largest mining shovels in the entire world and is located between here and Pittsburgh, a little bit closer to Pittsburgh at West Mineral. But it is an awesome thing to go visit. The Gilded Age. Something of little worth can be made grand by gilding it. Gilding is just giving it a thin coating of golden material. So a select few making big bucks and with big business became obsessed with materialism. Materialism is just the belief that physical comfort and possessions are more important than anything else. And this was big for the wealthy during this time. The people who were involved in the big business, they were able to make lots of money and they became totally obsessed with materialism. It even trickled down into the government. State legislatures elected U.S. senators, not the public. So any of our senators who would represent us in Washington, D.C., they were voted on by our state legislatures. So a wealthy Kansas senator named Samuel Pomeroy supposedly gave a state legislator large amounts of money to get his vote, which was a huge no-no. That's corruption. And a scandal erupted. Pomeroy ended up losing his seat in the re-election, and other senators resigned from office after accusations of bribery. So cheating didn't pay off in this case at all. Some tough times came about during the Gilded Age. The rich got richer, the poor stayed poor. 5% of American families controlled U.S. wealth, with most families falling below the poverty line, meaning that they didn't have barely enough to live on for their families to eat and have shelter. In the 1870s, the U.S. experienced an economic depression. which is a period where the economy suffers from mass unemployment and low business activity. This was due to overinvestment in the railroad and economic troubles in Europe that extended to the US, and that it was called the Panic of 1873. Banks who had loaned out money to people wanted those loans to be repaid right now. But people couldn't pay everything back at once. That's the whole point of a loan. The banks closed since they couldn't get money back from the loans. Low stock prices caused people to lose jobs when companies couldn't pay their workers. Railroads that were booming in the West, they went unfinished because they couldn't afford to pay their workers. Stock markets and investing, sometimes companies needed to raise money to make improvements or to pay off loans. And one way that they could do this was selling stock, which are small pieces of ownership in a company by investors. This is big. The stock market is huge today. This is called investing, the process of buying stocks in a company. So sometimes people will buy and sell stocks in the market, called the stock exchange or the stock market. They buy shares of companies that they think will do well in the future, and they hopefully will make money by doing that. So the stock market had taken a huge hit during this time in Kansas history. Farmers, they ended up having to adapt to the plains. More people were moving to western Kansas during this time, and they had to deal with a lot of challenges. Very few trees, little water, shorter grassland, very hard to plow, and so on and so forth. These hard times fell on Kansas farmers in the late 1800s, just like everyone else during the economic depression. Not only were they feeling the hit from the stock market, but harsh weather, drought, blizzards, grasshopper swarms, very little drinking water, all of this was affecting farmers and their families. They even had to stoop to using dried buffalo chips, also known as poo, for their fuel in order to be able to survive the winter. Some more adaptation that people had to deal with in Kansas. Settlers lived in dugouts or sod houses since there were very few trees for lumber. They had to adapt, build their homes into the ground. For fuel, in addition to using buffalo and cow chips, they used bundles of hay or corn cobs for fuel. They would end up burning those in order to get heat for their homes. Barbed wire was invented to make fences to hold their livestock. I mean, the livestock were money for the farmers, and if their livestock was just roaming free, they were losing money. So the barbed wire helped keep them all contained and safe. Settlers also dug deep wells to tap into the underground water source, and they used windmills to help pull the water to the surface. They also used windmill irrigation. So these are some ways that they would adapt to help make the best of their situation. During this time when the country was kind of just in shambles, there were calls for reform, calls for change. These tough economic times meant that many people were feeling distrust for those with power and money. Issues like drought, depression, and the wealthy's materialism led to calls for change. Other people wanted a piece of the pie. They wanted a chance to make some money as well. So reform movements began around Kansas and in the US, and please stay tuned for more in our next lesson dealing with reform. And we'll bring lesson 1 to a close. I will see you guys next time. Have a great day.